For all of America. And a major victory for the Obama administration. The U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday ruled that Barack Obama's signature health care law is constitutional. In Washington, your reaction now.
This is an amazing moment for the Obama administration. And the fact that we as court watchers and all the reporters were focusing in on Justice Kennedy as the swing vote here, when it was really the Chief Justice, John Roberts, who was the swing vote and is the decider, really, on upholding ObamaCare, as is written, as we've been talking about. Remember, in the immigration vote, people looked back and said, is this an indication that Roberts could be siding with the left even on another case? And people said, no, it's apples to oranges. But it seems that John Roberts has accepted that line of argument. And it's interesting, one more thing politically. As this case was being argued before it became law, as it was a bill, President Obama said this was not a tax. No way it was a tax. And he said it repeatedly. His legal team fought it as a tax, and they made that case in court, and this is what has upheld, it appears, his health care law.
Now to the politics of this. Remember, in the Senate, it was a party line vote. Not a single Republican senator voted in favor of it. 34 Democrats in the House voted with Republicans. Not a single Republican voted in favor of it. Shannon Bream has a couple hundred pages in her hands now. What did you find out, Shannon?
Well, it's interesting. There was so much focus on Justice Anthony Kennedy that he might be the swing vote here, but the dissent is made up, at least this primary dissent we're reading now, Justice Scalia, Kennedy, Thomas, and Alito. So like you've been saying, the Chief Justice turned out to be the swing vote here. Here's part of the dissent, and there is powerful language here. It says basically what's happened here is you've extended federal power to virtually everything. All of us consume food, and when we do so, the federal government can prescribe now what its quality must be and even how much we must pay. But the mere fact that we all consume food and are thus sooner or later participants in the market, their quotes, for food, does not empower the government to say when and what we will buy. That is essentially what this act seeks to do with respect to the purchase of health care. It exceeds all federal power. So a strong dissent there, but it includes Kennedy. Justice Kennedy goes with the dissent on this, with the wing, often viewed as the conservative. So it was the Chief Justice, as we're seeing as we parse through, who clearly was the deciding factor in this
All right, Shannon,
decision.
Thank you for that. We're getting word from the White House. President Obama will talk about this, his first comment coming within about 1 hour. So we'll stand by for that at the White House. You wonder how Medicaid, if that is struck down, how more Americans are able to access insurance if the roles at the state level are not increased, as the justices apparently have just ruled. Juan Williams with me now, Fox News political analyst. Juan, your reaction?
Well, I think it's a big day for the Obama administration, Bill. I don't think there's any way to get around it. This is a tipping point in terms of public perception of the law. For so long, we have heard the critics loud and clear in terms of the excesses of the law and the potential for damaging relationships between patient and doctor. But now we see that the court has affirmed that it is constitutional as a tax. I think you're going to see people now become accustomed to the idea and focus more on the benefits that attach to the Affordable Health Care Act, including closing the donut hole and protection for young people under 26, allowing them to stay on their parents' insurance. I could go on. But all of those consumer-friendly features, I think, now are going to come into sharper focus as people become accustomed to the idea that this is the law as affirmed by the Supreme Court. So to get to Karl Rove's point, it is vindication for the president as his signature legislative victory during his first term. And I think it puts Mitt Romney and the Republicans on the defensive to say, not just would we repeal it, but why do we think that we can do a better job in what has been a historic struggle to try to provide health care across the country.
And as you
everyone.
know, over the past few months, there has been common ground spoken publicly on behalf of Republicans and Democrats that some of those provisions are good things. And also the insurance companies, too, have voiced yet again their favor for them. The judge is back with me now. Specific question on how you fund or find insurance for more people at the state level if the Medicaid provision is declared unconstitutional.
Well,
how do you do that in the state capital?
I don't know how you do it, and candidly, Bill, we have not yet seen that part of the opinion.
They haven't held it unconstitutional.
It appears that what they've held unconstitutional are the punitive aspects of it. The federal government withholding other money that it owes to the states on other issues if the states don't comply with its command.
Here's exactly what the court wrote. This is from Chief Justice Roberts. Just so our viewers know, there was one provision of this law that required required a huge Medicaid expansion in all 50 states and said to the states, if you don't do it, if you don't put all these poor, lower-income folks on your Medicaid rolls, you're going to lose your existing Medicaid. So it was a big stick over the states. This is what the Chief Justice has written. Quote, nothing in our opinion precludes Congress from offering funds under the Health Care Act to expand the availability of health care and requiring that states accepting such funds comply with the conditions on their use. What Congress is not free to do is to penalize the states that choose not to participate in the new program by taking away their existing Medicaid funding. So they can't use that stick on the states of saying, if you don't do what we want you to do, expand these rolls, you're going to lose your existing Medicaid
what you're
funding.
saying
that
then
is a victory for the 26 states.
And what you both are arguing here is that is what is being printed on this blog. The Constitution requires the states have a choice.
Yes.
They have a choice about whether to participate in the expansion of eligibility. If they decide not to, reading here, they can continue to receive funds for the rest of the program.
Can we get back to Chief Justice Roberts, because he's summarized what he's written in 3 lines. The Affordable Health Care Act is constitutional in part and unconstitutional in part. The individual mandate cannot be upheld as an exercise of Congress's power under the Commerce Clause. That clause authorizes Congress to regulate interstate commerce, not to order individuals to engage in it. In this case, however, it is reasonable to construe what Congress has done as increasing taxes on those who have a certain amount of income. Stated differently, Congress's ability to regulate human behavior is limited, but Congress's ability to tax and spend is unlimited.
A couple of important points here. The court's decision to rule as they did on Medicaid is going to be a big deal. This act covered the very poor and sort of the next level up, middle class to lower middle class. Those were the ones who were covered by the expansion of Medicaid and then these exchanges that have been set up by the states. If the states have the ability to keep their existing Medicaid programs and not expand them, and we're still figuring it out, but if that's what this meaning is of this ruling, that they don't have to expand their Medicaid rules as Congress told them to do, then where are the very poor going to get the health care that the Congress put in place for them? That, as I'm reading it, may be in jeopardy now. I want to make one other point. The taxing power. President Obama on ABC News, September 20th, 2009. George Stephanopoulos. This is a tax increase about this law. President Obama, no, that's not true, George. For us to say that you've got to take responsibility to get health insurance is absolutely not a tax increase. Nobody considers this a tax increase. And on he went and repeatedly said this is not a tax increase. When they went into court, they said something very different, and the Supreme Court accepted that legal argument.
And the way this tax is expected to be implemented, I think it's fair to call it a tax now, regardless of what the debate was 3 months ago.
It's being taken out of your tax refund.
Correct. And that is how the government will collect it.
It's the most bizarre tax in the history of the country, because it's not related to your income, it's related to your behavior, and it does not fall on everyone equally. It only falls upon you if you refuse to comply with what the government has commanded you to do, and that command it doesn't have the power to articulate under the Commerce Clause. Look, we have to read this. We have to study it. As Megan points out, there may be parts of it that are inconsistent with other parts. We won't know until we see how this plays out.
In general terms, Medicare covers all Americans. Medicaid covers the poor. And that's the program that we just discussed here on item number 4 for expansion. Now, back to Shannon.